Hey guys, Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed the little clip at the beginning of the very peaceful sunrise over the new decade here in Iowa. The view from behind my apartment isn't all that much, but I thought it was kind of nice and just peaceful. So I want to take a little shot of it, and obviously you got to see Bessie, who is still, as you can see, trekking back and forth across the camera right now. So, excuse me if I am a little subdued in this video. I woke up wanting to do a video, even though between last night and the night before, I am operating on about 7 hours of sleep. So think of like 3.5 hours of sleep 2 nights in a row. Last night, I got, this night that I just woke up from, I got even less sleep than the night before, which is weird because the night before was the night when I missed my plane. So that's a whole story. So the 30th, I was scheduled to fly back to Iowa from visiting my parents in New York for about 2 weeks. And I made the mistake of getting a flight that didn't take off till like 6:30 p.m. And do not do evening flights, people. They are crowded. Well, for me, they're crowded, and it also I found made me like super antsy and anxious the whole day. And so then once I got on the plane, I was already kind of in a bad mood. And so whenever there was a slight, delay, as you get slight delays on planes, like the, wheeling around the airport, takeoff deck, and such, and things like that, and like it was cold and snowy, so like washing down the wings, washing the ice off the wings, any slight delay made me super grumpy, and boy were there delays. So the first flight actually took off all right. So I flew from Albany, New York to Chicago, the Chicago O'Hare Airport, and then I was scheduled to fly from Chicago O'Hare to Des Moines. And from Des Moines, I would just drive home the rest of the way. And at Chicago O'Hare, the flight was delayed by 15-20 minutes at first, and that's no big deal. That's pretty standard stuff at airports. We got on the flight, and we basically sat on this plane with almost nothing happening for about 2 hours. I might be exaggerating because I might be counting the time it took to like board and such, but still, that's like 2 hours to just get on and sit in a plane waiting and hoping for it to actually take off. The airport was really queued up. There were a ton of planes that were taking off at that time. It was very congested, and on top of that, it started snowing, and so the flight, whatever they're called, the landing strip, the takeoff strip, were getting icy and snowy, so they had to take care of that. And also the wings were getting icy, and they had to de-ice the wings. And for all of those things, there were long queues, right? Because it's the holiday season, and it's Chicago O'Hare, which is a terrible airport. So literally we were sitting around for 2 hours. And then what happened at the very end was the crew on the plane timed out, basically. According to FAA regulations, which I'm guessing is the flight attendant union, according to FAA regulations, airplane attendants and pilots can't work for more than 9 hours. And if we had gone through with the flight, they would have gone beyond that, and that would have been a big deal. So then it was it was supposed to be a 9:30 flight, and by that point it was past midnight. The flight was canceled, and we after sitting in that plane for 2 hours we wheeled back to where we got on and got off, and everyone who was on the plane was really frustrated and marched down to customer service. And we were all given a new flight of 10:15 a.m. the next day, or I guess the same day at that point. And the airline, I was flying United, the airline paid for a hotel, thankfully, and there was a shuttle to take us to to the hotel. And so I got a hotel room, and I wish I could have at least enjoyed the hotel room a little bit, but it was so late that I thought, maybe I should just order a glass of wine or something at this airport hotel room, just because it's I'm in a Marriott right now. And they also gave me, along with the hotel room, they gave me two $10 vouchers, so I could have just paid with those vouchers. But I didn't. I just got a decent night's sleep, and I did get a much better night's sleep than I was worrying I would get, because I was worried that I would just be sitting around the airport all night. I didn't realize at first that the airline would get us a hotel. So then the next morning, I got back to the hotel, or back to the airport. And funny little side note, when I was at the airport, at the Starbucks right next to my gate, where my flight that day was taking off, there was an employee at a Starbucks who was opera singing the people's orders and "Have a nice day" to them. So that kind of was a nice little touch that sort of brightened my day to see that. I like little I try to cherish fun little things like that, because I feel like they're nice. So anyway, yeah. But so yeah, then I got home, and for some reason last night I didn't do much for New Year's. I didn't go to a party or anything. I just stayed at home, and I drank a few screwdrivers. And for some reason last night I just could not get to sleep for the life of me. I finally fell asleep maybe about 4 hours ago, at 4:30 a.m. ish maybe. So I maybe got 2 or 3 hours of sleep last night, and I cannot explain why. I think it might just be that I'm still sort of restless from the whole affair. And so I was still just sort of antsy. So I'm hoping that tonight, this upcoming night, I can just go to bed early and, just make up for lost time, because on Friday I'm going to visit my friends in Iowa City, and whenever I visit those friends, we tend to stay up late into the night, and so I will be, having to make up for that next week. Anyway, so you've gotten my plane story. I'm gonna move on to what this video is supposed to be about now that I'm 10 minutes in. So I have a bunch of early 2020 videos that I want to do, and I'm not gonna list them all off, but they're all pretty light videos, and I sort of want to keep it that way. I want to do one video about a certain book that I'm reading at the moment. It's a slim little book. You've probably never heard of it. It's kind of obscure. Yeah, and I have 100 or so pages left. I might finish it today or tomorrow, but I want to do a little video about my experience reading it. So there's that. I also have some tags I want to do. I am gonna do my bookshelf reorganization and setting up of new bookcases. You will be seeing a time-lapse of all of that. Obviously I'm doing this video, which was a video I was excited to do. Yeah, so, and I want to do a big epic shelf tour as well. I want the shelf tour to be epic, but not to go on forever. So, I'll be asking you all what kind of a shelf tour you want from me. So, anyway, so I also have a lot of early 2020 videos. So after that, I wanted to just talk about some vague ideas about stuff that I want to happen in my reading life this year. I'm not really one for hard and fast New Year's resolutions or goals, because I feel like they're always kind of a really good way to set yourself up for failure. But I have some ideas of sort of directions where I want to take my reading this year, and I just want to talk about some of them. So first off, the big one that I haven't been able to shut up about is A Year of Reading One's Own, the quest to not purchase any books in 2020. That is a sort of project hosted by Kelly over at Books I'm Not Reading and Jason of Old Blues Chapter and Verse. Yeah, so I'm not going to be buying any books this year, which is why I want to do a shelf tour, because theoretically, this library will be remaining static for the whole year of 2020, or mostly static. So that is the big project. I don't know, my willpower kind of tends to come in fits and starts, and that's going to be the big challenge with the Year of Reading One's Own. It's just maintaining my willpower and not allowing other people to tempt me into buying books. That's the big problem, is when people who are close to me tempt me into buying books. My mother is especially guilty of this. So I just need to maintain my willpower, basically. So that the next goal that's related is, because the main motivation for a year of reading one's own for me is getting as many of the unread books on my shelves read. I have set my Goodreads goal to 150 books, which will be which if I accomplish it, will be more books than I've ever read in a single year. And I think it's doable. I'm not gonna push myself to get there. I'm not gonna be in some sort of a frenzy at the end of the year if I find I'm not getting there. But I do feel like a big goal like that will motivate me to read shorter books, shorter, easier books, which I will try to avoid that pitfall. And I mean, I am starting off the year with a famously long and difficult book, and I'm going to be buddy reading a rather long history book in the coming weeks with Patrice Jones. We're going to be reading Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and I have some other buddy reads of some longer books that are sort of scheduled. So I think I should mostly avoid that pitfall, if only through the books that I, end up buddy reading with people. But yeah, anyway, so 150 books, we're going to try for it. We'll see. It's, going to be a noble effort, not something that I'm going to, super hold myself to. And also related to that, I want to pick out a small handful of large books to reread. And aside from those, so the books, I know one book I am going to reread this year is Dante's Divine Comedy, because I read it last year and liked it so much on a reread. So I read it for the second time last year, and I liked it so much on that second read that I think on a third read I will really, really love it. So I want to reread that. I want to reread the Iliad because I have a lovely copy of the Alexander Pope translation of it, and the Iliad is also just one of my favorite books of all time. And two other rereads that I have in mind are Moby Dick and Paradise Lost. So that's 4. I think I might throw in a 5th, but maybe not. I don't know. But other than that, I would like my rereads to mostly just be books that I could basically read in a day, like plays, especially. Obviously I want to keep rereading Shakespeare plays, as I always do. I want to reread Hamlet at some point this year, because I want to reread Hamlet every year from now on, I think. Because it's just a great play for reading every year because of how bottomless it is. But again, you can read it in one day. So, a few big rereads with some smaller rereads sort of sprinkled in here and there. And that is related to the reading 150 books and to the getting the unread books pared down, because obviously when you're rereading a book you've already read, you're not getting an unread book read, right? So, yeah. Okay, so, and next goal, again, these aren't exact goals, but next thing I want to work on is I want to read more novels. I realized last year when I looked over my reading from the past few years that I actually don't read very much conventional fiction. Most of what I read that isn't nonfiction is plays and epic poems and just other things that are sort of like made-up stories but aren't exactly novels. And I would like to change that. I would like to read more just sort of, meat and potatoes novels, prose novels. What a concept. So I want to work on reading more novels. Also, I want to work on reading a little bit more science fiction and fantasy. I was really into science fiction and fantasy when I was younger, or I was into the concept of science fiction and fantasy. I didn't really read when I was younger, but I was into I really like Star Wars, and I liked a lot of sci-fi games and such, so I was into the concept of sci-fi fantasy. Didn't exactly read that much of it, but did read some of it as a kid, and so I want to get some books from that sort of, from those genres into my reading, and I have several. And I'm not going to list them all off, but I have several that I'm pretty excited about to read. I also want to return to reading literature from the period of about 1900 to about 1950. The Gone with the Book readathon that Mel over at Mel's Bookland Adventure hosted along with my reading of Edith Wharton, 2 books by Edith Wharton last year, really reminded me how much I love literature from that period. I don't know, that period in artistic, literary, and musical history really fascinates me. I think, it was such a interesting time of transition, I think, and such a time of great change, that had such a huge impact on basically everything that came after it. And also I think there was just some great stuff being done. There was this little book that was being written. Virginia Woolf was around. Edith Wharton was writing. T.S. Eliot was writing. W.B. Yeats was writing. There were all these great writers then. And there was just something about what they happened to be writing that I just find really interesting. And I have a really long list of books from this era, and it's kind of surprising looking at how kind of diverse that list is in terms of genre. When I think of early 20th century literature, I think of, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, Edith Wharton, Franz Kafka, T.S. Eliot again, W.B. Yeats, D.H. Lawrence, all these really sort of big, serious writers. But then there are also things like The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, which was published in the early 1900s, and the plays of George Bernard Shaw, which many of his plays debuted in the early 1900s. So it's just interesting when I was compiling that list how diverse the literature, and I mean, that makes sense, of course, that it would be diverse. It's just my own weird, narrow conception of what constitutes early modern literature, I guess. Anyway, yeah, so that's another thing. Another little thing I want to get into is Russian literature. I've only read a couple of Dostoevsky, and not much else, I don't think. I read Haji Murad at the end of last year, and I would like to read more Tolstoy. I have some more Dostoevsky on my shelf to read. I have, And Quiet Flows of the Dawn by Mikhail Sholokhov. I have Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev. I have several books, Russian books, so I want to get some more Russian literature into my reading. Also, I want to continue to read more of the classics of Greece and Rome, which is a big sort of area that is just sort of my little niche, I suppose. There are a few handful of booktubers who are really into the classics of Greece and Rome, and I'm one of them. And I would like to continue that interest, and I have a lot to read in that area, and a lot that I could be rereading too. So definitely continue with the classics of Greece and Rome. One book in that area that I'm particularly excited to get to is On the Nature of Things by Lucretius. I want to read The 12 Caesars by Suetonius. I want to read more of the lives of Plutarch. I have some Livy to read, among others. And then finally, the final sort of New Year project that I have written down, at least, is to read more German literature in 2020, which is a group, actually. It's sort of an event or project hosted by Britta Bowler and Mel over at Mel's Bookland Adventures. I think there's a hashtag for this project, so I will hopefully be using the hashtag if it actually exists. If it doesn't, then I will just leave links to their announcement videos for this project. But basically, Britta and Mel have just created a Goodreads group and a kind of system of levels for the project. And basically, the point of the project is just read books in German, books that were originally written in the German language, not necessarily by German authors from the country of Germany, but authors who were from maybe Austria, Switzerland, and others. So I want to participate in that, and I have quite a bit from that. And so yeah, I will be reading lots of German books. I have a ton of Thomas Mann to read. I have some Franz Kafka. I have a book by Herta Müller, and I have the poetry of Rilke. So I have a lot of German books that I could read for that, and I want to. So and ever since I've read Goethe's Faust, I've gotten much more interested in German literature. But it's I still have a very rudimentary knowledge of it. But Mel and Britta have some recommendations on the Goodreads group, so I'll be looking through that as well. But I can't buy any of them because, again, you're reading one's own. So anyway, that's some wool gathering about 2020. I hope it was somewhat enjoyable, but really this was sort of for me to just get some stuff out of my head, some ideas out of my head that were swimming in it, so that I can get on with the real substantial videos. Although, again, a lot of the videos that I have planned for the next couple of weeks aren't all that substantial. I'm on break until the 12th, so I have a lot of time on my hands. So you might be seeing me quite frequently. So yeah. Anyway, so thank you all for watching. Thank you. Happy New Year again, and I look forward to a good reading year, even if the world itself is looking pretty bleak in 2020. So, anyway, bye guys.